Air travel is truly incredible. Thanks to it, exploring the world and experiencing its diverse cultures has never been easier. But just because you're on a plane doesn't mean you're free from rules. In fact, breaking them can have serious consequences. So, from forgetting to switch to airplane mode to trying to climb into the overhead compartments, here are some things you should absolutely never do on an airplane. Number 1. Spoil shorts. My last vacation didn't get off to the best start. As soon as I boarded the plane, the flight attendant told me I had to either take off my Superman costume or leave the plane. Who knew airlines had dress codes? And what's more, they vary from airline to airline and can even change depending on the country you're flying to. Talk about confusing. For instance, countries like Indonesia, which are predominantly Muslim, tend to have more conservative dress standards. So, if you're flying there, it's respectful to cover up before boarding. But it's always a good idea to check the clothing guidelines before any flight. Wearing dirty, torn, or revealing clothing can get you kicked off a plane, and not just for major violations. Even something as simple as wearing flip-flops could cause issues. Back in July 2021, Turkish bodybuilder Denise Sapiner made headlines when she was denied entry onto an American Airlines flight to Miami. Why? Her shorts were deemed too short. And no, she wasn't duct taped to her seat. That happened to someone else for a completely different reason, more on that later. But after being refused boarding, Sapiner took to social media to express her outrage, claiming she wasn't dressed inappropriately and that the situation was an attack on her freedoms as a woman. So, what do you think? Were the airline staff justified? Or does Sapiner have a point? Would a man in the same outfit have been refused entry? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Number 2. No signal, no problem. You've probably heard the horror stories about what could happen if you don't switch your phone to airplane mode during a flight. Planes falling from the sky, chaos everywhere. Well, fortunately, that's not entirely true, but you should still turn it on. Airplane mode prevents your phone from searching for a signal. Some of the equipment pilots use operates on the same radio frequencies as cell phones and tablets. When your phone searches for a signal, it can interfere with this equipment. Imagine tuning an old analog radio. If two stations are close in frequency, the signals can interfere and cause static. That's what happens here, and pilots rely on these systems during critical times like takeoff and landing. In fact, back in January 2017, the pilots of a Boeing 737 lost all their map displays and onboard computers mid-flight. Scary, right? Thankfully, they managed to regain control and avoid disaster, but investigators suspect a cell phone signal might have been involved. While no planes have actually crashed due to phone interference, at least not yet, it's still a smart move to save your text for after the flight, not during. Number 3. Unpleasant flights. I think we can all agree that littering is terrible, but those who leave their trash on planes? They're in a league of their own. Flight attendants often only get paid for their time in the air. So when passengers leave garbage behind, the attendants are left to clean it up without any extra compensation. And the mess? It's not just your typical candy wrappers. One flight attendant reported finding, brace yourself, piles of dirty diapers and even soiled underwear stuffed into seat pockets. Dirty diapers are bad enough, but adult underwear? That's just too much. And believe it or not, things can get even worse. Some attendants have discovered used catheters, toilet paper, and even bottles of urine. How do people even manage that? On second thought, I'd rather not know. So, for the sake of the hardworking people who have to clean up after you, please don't leave trash on the plane. And whatever you do, avoid putting your food in the seat pockets. You never know what's been there before. Number 4. Peculiar passengers. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of pets. But would I want to bring one with me on a plane? Not so much. That said, some airlines allow a variety of animals to fly with passengers, as long as they behave. Others only permit service animals like guide dogs. But to get around these rules, people began bringing their non-service animals and claiming they were service pets so they could fly for free. We've seen everything from mini horses to peacocks, and even pigs being passed off as service animals. And as you might expect, things didn't always go smoothly. These animals would often cause disturbances, make messes, and leave chaos in their wake. Eventually, this led to a new regulation that only allows dogs as service animals on flights. While some feel this is unfair to those who depend on other animals, the rule is here to stay. But as wild as flying with a peacock sounds, people have brought far more bizarre things on planes. Back in 2012, one man smuggled an Egyptian cobra onto a flight in his carry-on, hoping to bring it home to his reptile shop. The snake made it through security, but once in the air, the situation quickly unraveled. The cobra, known for being highly aggressive and venomous, managed to escape and even bit the man. Chaos erupted as the snake slithered through the cabin. Thankfully, the man survived the bite, but the plane had to make an emergency landing so the snake could be removed. Who knew that snakes on a plane could be closer to reality than we thought? But that's not the end of bizarre in-flight animal encounters. In 2016, a passenger on a flight to Montreal was casually using her iPad when she suddenly felt something brush against her leg. Looking down, she was horrified to see a large tarantula crawling on her. She managed to brush it off, only to find there was more than one on board. Someone had decided to bring 2 tarantulas along as pets, causing the rest of the passengers to spend the flight on edge, many literally standing on their seats to avoid the spiders. Is anyone else feeling a bit itchy just thinking about this? Number 5. All right, I'ma head out. When it comes to things you should never do on a plane, there's one so obvious you'd think no one would ever attempt it. Any idea what it could be? If you guess trying to open the plane door mid-flight, you're spot on. Believe it or not, someone actually attempted this as recently as July 2021. While aboard an American Airlines flight to North Carolina, a woman suddenly stood up, began attacking flight attendants, and made a beeline for the front door of the plane, desperately trying to open it. Fortunately, the crew reacted quickly, restraining her before anything could escalate. Concerned she might try again, they decided to duct tape her to her seat for the remainder of the flight. Crazy, right? It turns out the woman was having a mental health crisis, which is undeniably sad, but for those on board, that would have been terrifying. That said, even if she had managed to overpower the crew, the plane wouldn't have been in any real danger. Despite what Hollywood shows us, it's physically impossible for someone to open an airplane door while in flight. And why? Well, planes are pressurized at high altitudes, with around 1,100 pounds of pressure pushing against each square foot of the door. Since airplane doors open inward, no one is strong enough to overcome that force and open the door mid-flight. So, while it's a relief to know no one can actually pull that off, attempting it is still a big no-no. Not only might you find yourself duct taped to a seat, but you could also face serious legal consequences once the plane lands. Talk about a sticky situation. And on that note, we've reached the end of our flight. Which of these stories surprised you the most? Have you had any crazy experiences on a plane? Well, we've just landed in the comment section, so drop your stories down below. And thanks for watching Curiosity Unleashed. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content. See you on the next adventure.